You know that feeling. You've just played what felt like a perfect round. You entry fragged, you called out locations, you anchored the objective. You did everything right, and you still lost. You hit tab, you look at the scoreboard, and there it is. You're sitting at the top of your team with a solid KD, a couple of kills, good survival, and then you look at your teammates. One guy went 0-4, another one droned himself into a wall at the start of the round and apparently just gave up. And the third one? I don't even know what he was doing. I genuinely don't know. Meanwhile, the enemy team? Diamonds. Every single one. Moving like a SWAT unit. Communicating. Peeking angles your teammates didn't even know existed. And you're sitting there asking yourself the same question millions of players ask every single day. Why does matchmaking keep doing this to me? Today, we're going to answer that. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what's happening, why it feels so personal, and what you can actually do about it. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first. I want to validate you. Because one of the most frustrating things about this topic is that when you bring it up, someone always says, "Oh, you're just tilted," or "Maybe you're the problem." And look, we'll get to that. But the feeling of being the strongest player on a weak team while facing a stacked enemy side? That's a real experience. It is not made up. There are actual mechanics behind why this happens, and I'm going to break them all down. But here's where it gets complicated. Our brains also make this feel way worse than it statistically is. And understanding that part is just as important. So let's talk about the human side first, before we get into the algorithm stuff. There's something called negativity bias. It's a psychological phenomenon where negative experiences register more powerfully in our memory than positive ones. It's literally how we're wired. Back in caveman days, remembering the bad stuff kept you alive. In gaming, it means that the one match where your teammate walked into a Capcan trap 3 times in a row is burned into your memory. But the 5 matches where your team actually played decent, those blur together and fade. There's also confirmation bias. Once you start believing the matchmaking is against you, your brain starts looking for evidence to confirm that belief. You notice every bad teammate. You remember every stacked enemy team. You conveniently forget the rounds where your team held it together. I'm not saying this to dismiss you. I'm saying it because understanding this is the first step to not letting it destroy your ranked experience. Every single ranked game uses some version of a hidden skill rating. In Siege, it's tied to your MMR, matchmaking rating. You see your rank, your copper, silver, gold, whatever. But behind that is a raw number that the game is actually using to match you. This number goes up when you win, down when you lose. But it's not just about wins and losses. It also factors in things like your performance, your KD, whether you're on a hot streak or a cold streak, and how long you've been at a certain rank. Now here's the thing that most people don't realize. The system is trying to balance teams, not individuals. This is the big one. This is what causes that exact feeling you're talking about. The matchmaking system looks at the average skill rating of both teams and tries to make those averages equal. It does not guarantee that every individual player on your team is at your level. So what does that look like in practice? It might take you, a high MMR player, and pair you with 4 lower MMR players to bring the team average down. Then it puts you against a more evenly distributed enemy team. On paper, it looks balanced. The numbers say the teams are equal. But your experience? You're carrying 4 guys who are clearly out of their depth, while the enemy team is all playing at a similar level and communicating like they've been a 5-stack for years. That's not a bug. That's the system working as intended. And it still feels absolutely awful. Here's another layer to it. The matchmaking system has to make a choice every single time it builds a lobby. Accuracy versus speed. If it's committed to only putting you in perfectly balanced matches, your queue time starts climbing. And in Siege, where you can usually find a match within 5 minutes or so, even an extra few minutes of waiting feels like an eternity when you just want to run a ranked game. So the system makes a trade-off. So what happens? The longer the queue sits without finding a perfect match, the more the system relaxes its standards. It widens the acceptable MMR range. Suddenly, players who are a bracket or two outside your range are getting pulled in. And now you've got that mid-silver on your team that has no business being in this lobby. This is especially bad if you play in off-peak hours, or if you're on a smaller server with a lower player population. There just aren't enough people in queue to build a clean lobby, so the system does its best with what it has. And then there's the Smurf problem. A Smurf, for anyone who doesn't know, is a high-level player who creates a fresh account to play at a lower rank. Why do people do this? Sometimes to practice without pressure, sometimes to stomp on beginners for content, sometimes to boost a friend. Whatever the reason, it's a problem, because a Smurf account looks like a new player to the matchmaking system. Low account level, low MMR, so it gets put in lobbies where it absolutely does not belong. And when that diamond level player pops off on the enemy team, it makes the whole match feel rigged, even though it technically isn't. Siege has been dealing with this for years. It's a community problem as much as a system problem. Here's something that's going to hit different when I say it out loud. The entire goal of ranked matchmaking is to get you to a 50% win rate. That's it. That's the dream scenario for the algorithm. You win half your games, you lose half your games. Your MMR stabilizes. You sit at your true rank. And for most people, that sounds fine in theory. But in practice, losing half your games feels awful, especially when each loss feels like it was out of your control because your teammates were bad. The system isn't trying to make every game fun. It's trying to make the system statistically fair over hundreds and hundreds of matches. You as an individual, you're just data points. You've probably heard this one. The idea that after a certain number of wins, the game deliberately puts you in a loser's queue and gives you bad teammates to bring your win rate back down. I know it feels real. I know after a 5-game win streak, the next lobby somehow always seems worse. But here's the thing. There's no verified evidence that any major game intentionally does this in the way people describe. What is real is that after a win streak, your MMR goes up fast. And when it goes up fast, the system still has to fill your lobby with whoever is available in that bracket. So you end up as the highest skilled player in the room, the guy the algorithm is leaning on to balance the team average, while your teammates are still climbing to where you already are. You didn't get worse. The system just made you the anchor. It's not a conspiracy. It's lag in the system, and it's genuinely frustrating regardless of the cause. All right, I have to say this, and I say it with full respect. If you are consistently getting matched with players who feel significantly worse than you, game after game, for weeks or months, there are two possibilities. One, the matchmaking really is putting you with lower skilled teammates because of the balancing mechanics we talked about. Two, you are at the rank you belong at, and the gap between you and your teammates feels bigger than it is because you only see your own good games clearly. And I know that's not easy to hear, but the honest truth is, in a working ranked system, the best players do climb. Not always fast, not always smoothly, but they climb. So if you feel stuck, it's worth asking yourself, am I consistently making the right calls? Am I ever the reason we lose? Watch your own replays. It changes everything. Here's what makes Siege uniquely brutal compared to most other shooters. It's 1 life per round. In Apex, if your teammate gets knocked, you can reas them. In Warzone, there's a gulag. Even in Valorant, you respawn next round without losing currency if you play it right. In Siege, 1 bullet, 1 mistake, you're done. Go watch your teammates. That means the impact of a bad teammate is amplified beyond what it would be in any other game. If one of your 4 teammates dies in the first 5 seconds of a round because they hard-peeked a known angle with no information, that's it. You're playing 4v5 for the rest of that round, and in Siege, 4v5 is practically a loss. So when people in other games say bad teammates aren't that big a deal, Siege players know that's just not true here. One bad player can cost the entire round in a way that doesn't happen in most games. Siege is, at its core, a communication game. The whole system is built around gathering information, sharing it with your team, and making coordinated decisions. So what happens when half your team has their mic muted? Or they're 12 years old and screaming about something completely unrelated? Or they're just silent, droning around, giving you nothing? You're essentially playing a coordination-based tactical shooter in solo mode. And that is hard. You're making decisions blind. You're not getting told where the defenders are. Nobody's calling out the hole they just made. You find out the hard way. Good siege is beautiful. Bad siege is a coin flip with extra steps. One more siege-specific thing, the KD issue. A lot of siege players judge their own performance by KD. And look, in most shooters, KD is a decent indicator of how well you played. But in siege, specifically, KD alone can be misleading. You can go 3-0 in a round and still have lost because you never contested the objective. Meanwhile, someone can go 1-2, but they planted the diffuser, rotated correctly, and kept 2 defenders occupied while their teammate got the kills. A good KD in siege doesn't automatically mean the matchmaking should be giving you better teammates. The system looks at wins and losses more than it looks at individual stat lines when it comes to your MMR. So if you've got a great KD but a below average win rate, that's a conversation worth having with yourself. The single most impactful thing you can do when you know your team is going to be inconsistent is pick operators that don't rely on your teammates to function. Ash, Jaeger, Zofia, Sledge. Attackers who can create their own angles, make their own space, and be effective even when nobody is coordinating with them. On defense, Jaeger, Rook, Valkyrie. Operators that can set up independently and still contribute even when isolated. Avoid operators that are entirely dependent on team setups. If you're playing Montagne and nobody's shooting for you, you're just a very expensive shield. If your team isn't communicating, fill that void yourself. Start calling. 2 on site. Rotate through kitchen. I need someone on that flank. You will not always get a response. Sometimes you'll call into the void. But sometimes even a silent team starts to follow a confident voice. And even if they don't, you're forcing yourself to think more clearly about the game, which makes you play better. Lead the lobby. Don't wait for someone else to do it. This is honestly the biggest quality of life improvement you can make. Stop solo queuing if it's making you miserable. Find one reliable friend, even one, and queue together. Suddenly, you have guaranteed communication on at least one flank. You have someone who's on the same page as you. You have a person you can trust to rotate when you call it. One good teammate changes the entire dynamic of a lobby. The difference between 5 randoms and 4 randoms plus one person you trust is enormous in Siege. Set a hard rule. If you lose 2 ranked games in a row, take a break. Go get water, watch a video, do literally anything else for 20 minutes. Tilt is not a myth. Tilt is a real psychological state where your decision-making gets worse because you're frustrated. And playing ranked while tilted is how you turn a 2-loss streak into a 6-loss streak. Your future self will thank you for stepping away. Remember how we talked about queue times forcing the system to widen skill brackets? You can fight that by playing when the most people are online. For most regions, that's evenings on weekends. More players in queue means the system has more options to build a clean lobby. You'll get better matches, not perfect, but noticeably better, just by timing when you grind. So here's where we land. Matchmaking is not your enemy, but it is imperfect. It's a system that's doing its best to build balanced lobbies out of thousands of players with wildly different skill levels, playing at different times, on different servers, with different ranks that may or may not accurately reflect their actual ability. Sometimes that system produces a lobby where you feel like the only person who knows what they're doing. Sometimes it produces a lobby where your team plays out of their minds and you win clean. Most of the time, it's somewhere in the middle. The matches that feel the most unfair are the ones that stick with us. The smooth wins fade away. That's just how our brains work. But here's the truth that I want you to hold on to. If you are genuinely better than your current rank, you will climb. The system will recognize it. It just takes time, consistency, and the emotional discipline to not let the bad lobbies take you out of your game. Play your game. Control what you can control. Fill the communication void. Pick operators that let you carry. And when the lobby is a lost cause, take the L, close the game, touch some grass, and come back tomorrow. If you made it to the end of this video, I genuinely appreciate you. Drop a comment below and tell me the most unhinged teammate moment you've ever experienced in Ranked. I know you've got one. Like and subscribe if this helped, and I'll catch you in the next one.